From sea to shining sea and everywhere in between.
Wherever you are around the country.
This is America's Outdoor Talk program, Outdoors This Week. Outdoors This Week.
Get the kids, get the dog, get the cat. Sit them all down next to the radio. We are going to be talking about the great outdoors today.
And now, with America's latest news and talk on the great outdoors.
This is a dangerous place, man. You've got 1,000-pound bears wanting something that you have.
Here's your host, Alex Langer.
Why, that would be me. Thank you, Mr. Announcer. And we're here today with the lovely Lynn. She is in the studio looking very seductive, if I may say so.
Thank you.
Is that harassment? I don't think it is.
No.
Listen, today we have a very, very special guest. He's somebody that we have all the time, and he is one of the top elite anglers on the BASS tour. He is from Jasper, Texas, and he learned how to fish on Lake Sam Rayburn, which is one of the great fisheries of this country. And he's been fishing the BASS tour since 1996, and he's got earnings totaling over $1 million, if you can believe that. And he fishes the Bassmaster Elite Series, and he just finished 9th in the Bassmaster Classic in the past couple of weeks. And he's made many appearances in the Bassmaster Classic throughout his career. His fishing strength is power fishing in shallow water, and his favorite technique is pitching and flipping a jig. And he says the deep, clear water lakes are his biggest weakness. And when he's not fishing, he also loves to hunt deer and ducks. Poor ducks.
I know.
Then we have all of Lynn's Southern gentlemen today. We have Larry Whiteley from Bass Pro Shops. We got Sammy Lee from the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. And then we have good old, what's his name, Wade Bourne.
Wired to Fish.
Wired to Fish and Wired to Hunt. Yeah, okay. And so that's it. And then, of course, how can I forget Ron Linder, our northern gentleman, who is a grandfather and is happily married. You don't go for northern people anyway.
Oh, it's always the southern gentleman.
You love the southerners. So there you go. Southerners, you're in luck. All right, look, folks, we'll be right back after this.
Hang tight. More of America's Outdoor Talk program, Outdoors This Week, after this.
Hi, folks. Ron Linder here for Linder's Angling Edge Television. Seen this weekend on a whole bunch of various channels. The Outdoor Channel, WFN, the Pursuit Channel, many of the Fox Sports Net, and a host of broadcast markets. We're being seen all over. Okay, what happened this last week? The Bassmaster Classic, which was held on Grand Lake of the Cherokees near Tulsa, Oklahoma. Interestingly, we had two of our people that I just filmed for a commercial that were in the hunt. Out of the three top leaders at the very end, Mike Iaconelli, Brandon Polanic, I made commercials with both of these fellas just shortly before that. And Cliff Pace eventually won the tournament with 51 pounds, which wasn't bad. All in all, it was a pretty good show. I'm starting to wonder here, and I'm just going to voice my opinion. Now, I've been doing fishing television, including tournaments for nigh on to 43 years now. And here's what I suspect, and I don't know. They were showing everything on streaming video on. You could get it on the internet. So nothing is a secret. Nothing that wasn't done. They showed clips of everything that was happened. Now, if you had the Super Bowl, which is the biggest thing in football, and it was all over, you know who won, you know everything, and then 2 weeks later, you're going to run the program, I'm wondering what in the world with Bassmaster they're going to run the show here in 2 weeks. Even the littlest incident was picked up because they were using what's called a Bass Track system. You knew day by day, but roughly who was leading, etc. The game has changed. Some time ago, when we were working with FLW doing their walleye series, I tried to recommend that maybe we ought to sit there and strictly do at the end, just a recap of what was done, because really there is no anticipation. you're not wondering who did what. You could maybe comment on some of the things that did happen, highlights. In other words, doing a highlight roll. And that's probably what would be done, because I know that it's forever changed. Now with the internet and with streaming video, and they're doing everything, anything that was supposed to be known about the tournament, for those who watch, the groupies that watch it, they know it all. And I watched it on and off all weekend. And especially when I had I worked for Lapla, and they had two of their ace men, Iconelli and Polanic, right up there fighting it out for Sydney. Ended up, in the second, third, fourth, as it was. Hank Cherry was a wild card, which made the thing interesting. But at any rate, there will be no surprises after this. Everything that was to be known or brought out by the observers, maybe little things here or there, and I'm sure that they're going to tell you what lures exactly they used, but a lot of them was already explained. I saw Polanic explaining what he was doing, and we didn't know so much about Cliff Pace. But anyway, to recap the whole thing, if you were to run the Super Bowl and everything is all done, and you would then really, it's all over but not televised, and you'd run the Super Bowl 2 weeks later, what kind of audience would you get? This is my question for bass fishing. Well, with that, thanks, folks, and see you later.
A day in March coming up on Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World.
Would you like to spend less time on the couch and more time in the fresh air? Would you like your kids to stare at a bobber instead of the TV? Would you gladly trade in your microwave for a Dutch oven? Then you belong at Bass Pro Shops. Every week, we offer free skills workshops to help you get started. See the store or go to BassPro.com for more information. Bass Pro Shops. Your adventure starts here.
March is a month of subtle changes and gentle awakenings. A warm March day will get us outdoors, where we sometimes find buds ready to burst open with tiny leaves and other timidly growing spring greenery. Just as these signs convince us that spring is here and the unending slowness of winter is over, warm spring breezes turn into cold, sharp winds that freeze you to the bone. A beautiful day filled with sunshine can be followed by a day of single digits and snow covering the tender green shoots. March days tease us and then remind us that winter is still around, though growing weak. Spring will win the tug of war. When outside during the warm days of March, look for colors of spring and tiny wildflowers bursting through decayed leaves. I look forward to the first trilling sounds of the spring peeper frog, because I know they'll be followed by the halting sound of the whippoorwill. Spring is worth waiting for. I'm Larry Whiteley, and this is Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World.
Thanks, Larry. And I hear you. The snow is melting right outside the studio here. I can see patches of grass. The back of winter is definitely broken in March. So you're right on that, Larry. But we have some more snow up here than you have down there. So let me go to our first and major guest for this hour. Todd Faircloth is from Jasper, Texas. He learned how to fish on Lake Sam Rayburn, which is one of the great bass fisheries in the country. And he's been fishing with bass since 1996, with earnings totaling over $1 million. He just finished the Bassmaster Classic and finished 9th. That's terrific, because he finished 1 ounce away from Kevin Van Dam. And if he can fish within an ounce of Kevin Van Dam and do that in the Bassmaster Classic, that's pretty darn good. His strength is power fishing shallow water. And his favorite technique is pitching and flipping, and he says the deep, clear water lakes are his biggest weakness. When he's not fishing, Todd loves to duck hunt and deer hunt. First of all, Todd, welcome. And you injured your right hand right before the Classic. What was it like going into day one with bandages and pain?
Well, to be honest with you, Alex, it was so cold up there. My fingers were numb from the coldness anyway, so it didn't really matter that much. But it made it awkward to try to tie a knot, and when it's that cold and you're fishing that cold weather like that, you've got to wear gloves and you got to be bundled up, and everything's just a little bit slower when you got all those clothes on and stuff like that.
What'd you do to your hand, if I may ask?
I got a hold of a staple. We had media day the day before that. I got a hold of a staple and sliced the two ends of my fingers, and it wasn't real deep, but they were long, about 3/4 of an inch long on both of them, and It was right across the tips of them, so it was an inconvenience anyway. But we made it through it. They're healing up, and I'll be ready for the next one.
You always understate things, and inconvenience is an understatement. You think it affected your performance, or you probably don't think it did, right?
No, not at all. It, like I said, it made my night time and all that a little bit slower. But as far as being a hindrance of me, not doing as well as I did, it didn't have an effect on that at all.
How do you feel about coming in the top 10? You don't fish to come in the top 10, do you?
No. I mean, the Classic's a little bit different mindset. There's no points involved in it, and it's our championship, and you fish for first place, and that's everybody's goal. And the Classic is something that is a pretty big notch on a professional angler's career, and it opens a lot of doors. It shows, it gets your sponsors, your existing sponsors, a lot of exposure, and it's a big item for a pro angler, and hopefully one of these days I'll be able to hoist that trophy above my head. I've been close several times, and you just got to have things go your way for 3 days in a row, and
right.
I never was really in contention. Going in the last day, I didn't feel like I was in contention to win. I was like in 21st place, I believe, and had a lot of ground to make up. So my goal for that day was to make the top 10, and I was able to do that, and I was proud of that. But that was not my goal going up there. My goal going up there was to win. I
just want you to know that Lynn and I are pulling for you, and there's always next year, right?
That's right.
All right. We got to go to a quick break, and then I want to come back and talk to you about your strategies during the Classic, all right?
All
right. So, folks, we'll be right back after this.
We'll be back in a moment with more Outdoors This Week with Alex Langer.
I'm the big boss bass, and you work for me.
Wow! Woo! Hold on to that, and that's a good one. Since 1984. Tight Lines with Sammy Lee.
Almost any lake you go on has these types of fish attractors, but most folks don't seem to realize how good they really are. Hello, this is Sammy Lee. In just a moment, I'll continue talking about boat docks and piers and what lures to use to catch more bass from these places this spring. But first, this message.
When it comes to fishing tackle, maybe you've seen it all, but with smart baits, you ain't seen nothing yet. They're called smart baits because they're smart enough to change colors at the right depth to fool old mossy jaws. An incredible new thermal color changing technology. I've seen them in action, and folks, these baits work. Are your baits smart enough to change colors? Ours are. They're called smart baits, and when they arrive in early March, the fishing world will never be the same. Catch a sneak peek online at smartbaits.net. Smart Baits. Color changes everything.
If you go on any lake in America, you're likely to find boat docks and piers. Now, from a fishing standpoint, these can be some of the most productive and often overlooked areas on any impoundment. But what lures should you use to catch bass off of boat docks and piers with? Well, that's a good question. For many years, I thought that the only baits I could use to catch bass off of a boat dock or pier were plastic worms or jigs and pigs. It wasn't until a few years ago that I discovered how effective a crankbait or a spinnerbait could be on these man-made structures. I dare say that most anglers that fish docks and piers simply throw their lure at or across the ends of them. If a fish doesn't bite their lure on the first or second cast, then they move on. But hold on there, Mr. Fishless. When moving into position to fish a dock or pier, you should always begin your assault by throwing a plastic worm or jig and pig at the ends of the structure. But when your first cast or two doesn't produce, don't move on, simply change lures. By fishing different types of lures, topwater, shallow running crankbaits, deep diving crankbaits, and bottom bouncing lures like the plastic worm and jigs, from the end of the dock or pier and moving up the walkway toward the shoreline, you're more likely than not going to find out how the bass are positioned on a dock, and secondly, at what depth the fish are stationed. Once these two things are determined, it's a simple matter of fishing other docks and piers in the same fashion to catch the most and largest numbers of fish that are feeding that day. If you'll take a little time, fish a variety of lures, and think about what you're doing and where the fish are located on a dock or a pier, then you'll be on your way to making boat docks and piers some of your favorite places to fish, like I have. I'll be back with more Tight Lines after this. The next time you try fishing a boat dock or pier, remember the things that I've told you over the past couple of days. It will increase your catch, I promise. I'm Sammy Lee, and until next time, Tight Lines.
Tight Lines, brought to you by FishMate, the ultimate fishing app for your smartphone. By UFP, America's leading maker of brake systems for boat trailers. And by SmartBaits, color changes everything.
Now, Sammy, didn't anybody prep you? Don't you know about the flying lure? Didn't Lynn give you any notes?
I'm sure I did.
What's the matter with that, Sammy? The only bait to fish a boat dock with is a flying lure.
That's
because
right.
it goes under the dock. I'll leave that for another day. We have with us our man of the hour, Todd Faircloth. He's from Jasper, Texas, and his favorite lake is Sam Rayburn. That's where we're going to learn how to fish. He has won over $1 million in the BASS circuit, and he is with us today. Todd, you moved from 24th place on day 2, and you finished 9th in the last day. What's the most important thing you think that made you come up from 24th to 9th?
You know, Alex, the fish that I was catching during practice were a lot shallower than the fish that I caught during the actual tournament.
Yep.
And I think, I didn't really get dialed in on that until the second day. And I caught some of my fish in the same areas that I caught them in or was getting bites in practice, but the fish had moved out a lot deeper. And, the first day I went through a lot of my areas and, caught a few fish where I had been catching them. But the second day, I started fishing out a little bit deeper, and I started getting bit, right at the boat or real close to the boat. And I kind of repositioned my boat out a little bit deeper, and I was catching them on that last lip out there. And, in like, 15 to, I caught some fish as deep as close to 20 foot. And, those fish weren't out there during practice. I tried to fish out there, and, I couldn't get bit. And the water temperature dropped, as much as 4 degrees in some areas. And those fish backed out. And I just figured that out during the event, and that's what propelled me to catch what I caught.
The water temperature dropped, and the bass moved deeper on you. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How did you dial into that?
Well, like I said, the second day, I was fishing through one of my key areas, and, I wasn't getting bit real good up where I was getting most of my bites in practice, and I started fishing my jig out, a lot out deeper, and I started noticing some activity on my depth finder right underneath my boat, and, just paying attention to that kind of stuff, and I started fishing out a little bit deeper, dragging my bait out in that zone, 15 to 18 foot, and I caught a fish. And when I caught that fish, it just really dialed me in. I said, well, I feel like these fish have moved out some, and that was a clue. And I started, devoting a lot of my time to fishing that last lip out there in 15 to 18 foot of water.
Right.
And like I said, that's where I caught most of my fish at.
Now I'm going to ask you what everybody wants to know, which is what lure did you catch your fish on, or what lures?
In practice, I was getting a lot of bites on a crankbait, a moving bait, and just covering water. And I was using a Strike King Series 3 and like a green crawl pattern.
Right.
And during the tournament, I caught a couple of fish on it, but they just weren't willing to chase a bait from me. And I caught the biggest, probably 80% of my fish on a 1/4 ounce Strike King Bitsy bug. It's a real small profile jig, and I was tipping it with a baby rodent in green pumpkin color, and I was fishing it on light line, like 10-pound test line, and I just really had to finesse those fish into biting. I was just crawling that.
If anybody has fished a Bitsy bug, that's a tiny little jig. I mean, it's like half the size of a normal jig, wouldn't you say?
Yes, absolutely. It's a real compact, small profile jig, and I found in cold weather, like in cold water temperatures, like we were fishing there, a small compact profile jig like that is a lot of times is a key, to finesse and coaxing those fish into biting. And
right.
Like I said, the slower you fish, the better off. You could speed up and try to cover water, and you just couldn't get bit. I mean, you just had to drag that bait right in front of those fish to get them to bite. And slow is the key.
Let me ask you the key question, which is, if you were using finesse baits, why didn't you use a 4-inch worm or something like that?
I've just always had better luck with the jig in cold weather, and that's my confidence bait, and I really feel like, during that time of year, crawdads are a key thing that the fish are feeding on.
Yep.
And I just feel like I have a better chance also of catching a bigger fish on a jig as opposed to like a little 4-inch finesse worm.
Right.
All that kind of played in. I'm sure I could have caught some fish on a finesse worm, but my confidence was in the jig and bit on it, so I didn't see a whole lot of need to change.
Jigs just catch bigger fish than soft plastics. What color jig were you using?
I was using a brown, and I was using a brown jig, and it had like 3 strands of orange in it, and I think that was key. And I was also on the baby rodent, and I was tipping the very ends of it just like 1/8 of an inch. I was dyeing the tips of it, in an orange, and I don't know if it made that much difference, but in my head it did make a difference. Right. And I felt like maybe I was doing something a little bit different, and I really like orange and red and brown. That time of year, it seems like, if you dig underneath a rock or, find a crawdad sticking out of a fish's throat, it's usually always got some brown and some bright orange or red in it. And,
right.
Just from experience fishing, you learn that kind of stuff, and you always try to match the hatch.
Todd, thank you. We got to go to a break right now. Would you come back for another segment, please?
Sure.
All right, well, folks, we'll be right back with Todd Faircloth, who came in 9th in the Classic, and we'll be right back.
I'm hooked on hooking up, and there ain't no cure. The only remedy.
More of America's favorite outdoor talk program, Outdoors This Week, after these messages.
Break out the heavy line. I'm hooked on hooking up.
New fishing techniques come along each year, and this one's about as unique as I've heard. It's Wally Marshall's practice of shooting the docks for crappie. In early spring, before these panfish spawn, they collect under boat docks in big numbers. Wally knows how to get them out. I'm Wade Bourne, and this is Wired to Fish Radio. In a minute, Wally Marshall tells how to score big time on crappie right now.
Stay tuned for more Wired to Fish Radio.
Cabela's is the world's foremost outfitter for hunting, fishing, camping, and outdoor gear. They offer more gear than anybody, best selection, prices, and quality, all backed by Cabela's legendary guarantee. Shopping with Cabela's has never been easier or more convenient. You can outfit all your needs through Cabela's catalogs, website, and their many stores. Check them out at Cabela's.com. Cabela's, the world's foremost outfitter. Imagine yourself thrown into the water. Maybe your boat hit a log. Maybe you just lost your balance on a slippery deck. What about your boat? Is it safely stopped, or is it circling, motor running, bearing down on you with the propeller turning at high speed? Accidents like this occur every year. That's why the U.S. Coast Guard recommends that all boaters install an engine cutoff switch that stops the motor automatically if the operator falls out of the boat. I'm Wade Bourne, reminding you to boat responsibly.
For more information, visit uscgboating.org. This is Wired to Fish Radio.
To get a visual picture of how Wally Marshall shoots the docks, think slingshotting. Wally rigs a 7-foot light-action spinning rod, a reel loaded with 6-pound test line, and a lightweight crappie jig. Then he starts fishing boat docks, targeting the deepest, darkest corners where most anglers can't cast. But Wally can cast there, and he does so by holding the jig with one hand and pulling down on the line so the rod bows under tension. Then he holds the rod close to the water, aims, and lets go. By the way, he's got the reel spool open and the line caught, so when he releases the lure, it'll shoot toward the target. Then when the jig hits the water, Wally starts reeling it in slowly, and he pays close attention for a bite.
You want it to fall real slow. That keeps that lure in the strike zone longer. So when that bait's falling down through there and those crappie, there's several hundred or 50 or 60, ever how many crappies on that dock. It's kind of like a competition. Actually, you can draw them to you, because once you get a crappie on and you start reeling him in, you can't see it with your naked eye, but there's other crappie chasing that crappie. And so you kind of pull them out to you. If they're way back underneath there, you're pulling a bunch of them out because they'll swim out with that other crappie, and then you can make shorter casts and still catch them.
So give Wally Marshall shooting the docks method a try. You'll see it's deadly on crappie in the spring. And that's today's Wired to Fish Radio. I'm Wade Bourne saying thanks for listening and get outside.
Thanks, Wade. Listen, Lynn, is Wade ganging up with Sammy on me?
I think it's some sort of conspiracy.
It is a conspiracy.
Yeah.
I'm sure of it. Both of these men have just completely ignored the flying lure.
Yeah, they have. I'm going to have a word with them.
The 2-inch flying lure works great on crappie.
That's awesome.
Now, what's the matter with these boys?
I don't know.
I'm going to have to give them a good talking to.
Yeah, I think they need that.
Remember, like Jed Clampett used to say
yes.
in the Beverly Hillbillies, I'm going to have a long talk with that boy.
Out by the cement pond.
That's right. That's right. We have one of the greats of bass fishing with us today. His name is Todd Faircloth. He has been a guest on this program many, many times. And his strength is power fishing shallow, but his favorite technique is pitching and flipping. And we were talking about that today. Welcome back, Todd. What is it about the jig, you think, that attracts the bigger fish?
Well, it's just a proven, big fish catcher. I mean, it's they make jigs in all different types of sizes now. I mean, you've got football jigs, you got flipping jigs, you got grass jigs, you got the bitsy jig, you got swim jigs, and there's an application for all types of jigs, and there's a reason for the different styles of jigs. You need a variety of jigs to cover all different situations, and one of the new trends on tour, and it's been the craze over the last 3 or 4 years, has been a swim jig, and it's a different head design. It's got a thinner weed guard, and it's a powerful technique at times, and you can use a jig and from 6 inches of water all the way down to as deep as you want to fish one. And there's a wide variety of jigs that you can use, and you need to learn the different applications for each. And it's just a proven big fish catcher. It can mimic a crawdad, which is one of the bass's favorite forage, and it also mimics a brim or a bluegill real well. And I think a lot of people don't understand that, and they're missing out because a lot of times, especially like when you're fishing docks or something like that, you'll see a bunch of brim and bluegill around them, and a lot of times you can take a jig and swim it around those docks and mimic that bluegill or brim and catch some big fish on it. But it's one of my favorite lures, probably the most versatile lure out there. I mean, it's one that a lot of people have a tough time gaining confidence with a jig, and the jig that I was using in the Classic, which is a Strike King Bitsy bow jig, is a small profile jig. It's going to get you probably more bites than a big profile jig, maybe not as big a bite, but it would be a good jig for a beginner that doesn't have a whole lot of confidence in a jig to go out there and fish with and, gain confidence in a jig. And then you can go a step up to the bigger jigs. Another thing is matching your line size and your rods to the type of jig you're fishing. Like the Bitsy bow jig is a light. It's got a light wire hook on it. It's a small profile jig, and you're going to use lighter equipment with that jig. Say, like I was using 10-pound test line, a medium heavy rod with a fairly soft tip. And the reason for that is if you put that same jig on 20-pound test and a big flipping stick, you're gonna spring that hook, and you're gonna bend that hook out whenever you set the hook. So paying attention to detail like that, and matching your rods and line and equipment up with cartridge using is real important.
Do you ever use spinning equipment with the Bitsy jigs?
You know, you definitely can, Alex. You know, you can fish the Bitsy bow jig on an 8 or 10 pound test on a spinner rod and reel outfit. Absolutely. Personally, you know, if I can get away with it, I'm going to use a bait caster just because, you know, I have more control over where my bait's going to go with a bait casting outfit. Right. But absolutely, you can use it with a spinner.
Todd, we'll come up to the end of the show. Where can people get a hold of you on the internet?
I'm at toddfaircloth.com. That's my website.
People can go to toddfaircloth.com and learn all about you, right? All right.
They can go there and that's my website, and they can click on there and check it out. And I've also got a Facebook page, and you know, I can't answer every Facebook question or response, but I'll usually pick out, you know, 3, 5, or 6 a month, you know, and try to respond to them.
Okay, Todd, thanks for being on once again, and congratulations on your top 10 finish in the Classic, all right?
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me.
All right, you take care. And, folks, thanks for being with us today. We'll be back with you next time on Outdoors This Week. Bye-bye.
Alex Langer, Outdoors This Week.